People from all over the place joining us here at the moment. Perth, Northern Beaches in Sydney, Launceston in Tasmania, Bunbury in Western Australia, Northeastern Victoria there at Alpine Radio. So many community broadcasters from all across the nation. Wonderful to have you here. What I might do while we're waiting on Pat to arrive is, and I'm just wondering if I should start the webinar proper before doing this. Time to make an executive decision. Never been very good at these executive decisions, but maybe should I do it? Should I make the executive decision? God, it's so stressful in these times of COVID-19, isn't it? To know exactly what the right thing to do is. What I might do is I'll just go us live on Facebook to start off with. If it's going to let me, was going to let me, now it's stopped. Do this again. Does anyone here do a radio show? Do you just make it up as you go along? I know I certainly do. And it's made things just so wonderful for me. Alrighty. Waiting on this. I wonder if you can see my screen at the moment. Can you see my Facebook? Gee, I hope not. There'll be some things on there that you won't easily forget. And thanks to everyone for your patience while we wait for our presenter to get here. And thanks very much to Michaela there from the CMTO for getting there in the chat box and saying what's up to everyone. Great to have it there. Great to have you all here. All right, I've just gone live on Facebook. Just waiting for it to start now. I'm still waiting on our wonderful presenter, Pat Bryson from the US, to dial on in. Oh, in fact, is she there already? No, not as yet. Oh, well, such is life. So, let me just hit record on this thing. And yes, I do a radio show, and I do make it up as I go along. And it's very, very good fun. Hi there, my name's Danny from the Community Broadcasting Association of Australia. I nearly said Community Media Training Organisation, but let's face it, they'd never have me as part of their ranks. That's because they've just got excellent taste. Here for you for this afternoon's webinar, Sponsorship and Revenue in Response to COVID-19. And we are waiting on our presenter, Pat Bryson from Bryson Broadcasting International, to join us from the United States. Before we get started, I do need to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which we're broadcasting, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. And for all those people there getting familiar with the chat, please feel free to get on there and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which you're joining us. Now, this was some stuff that I was going to bring up towards the end of the session, and it's just looking at what stations are doing in regards to trying to maintain those sponsorship relationships in the next little while. Salt 106.5, they're on the Gold Coast. They have the 5 tips for your business in the current climate. Now, if things had been working, if the current climate and my presentation status had been more correct, these sentences would have faded in front of you, building tension as we go through each level of business maintenance. But here, as it stands, they're just all there in one big go. First thing is to let people know that your business is still open. So there's obviously, no one really knows what's happening with a lot of things there at the moment. Obviously, sort of grocery stores and pharmacies are open, but what else is still sort of classified as an essential service and is there and operational? So you need to monitor that to find out what businesses are still there and are able to access any sort of sponsorship that might be available there at your station. Take a genuine interest in your clients and customers. And this wouldn't be too hard for many stations because obviously you've sort of got those relationships with the businesses in your community. It's been one of those sort of things that a lot of this stuff will be things that you've been doing for a long, long time. Had those people there with you. They've been long-term sponsors of the station. Provide a special offer for your client. Now, obviously, how that special offer works will depend on your broadcasting environment. I know that some stations are doing a sort of thing where they're offering businesses who might not be able to purchase sponsorship at that time, because the money coming in is one of those things that's sort of, they're not really knowing what's going on there. The potential is there for you to offer the sponsorship for Nix and make it be one of those sort of things that when the world rights itself and we're all back on more stable footing, that what we can do is sort of go back and revisit that relationship. It is one of those things where you've got those platforms to be able to offer that sponsorship. And it is probably going to be one of those things that is going to help with everything. So why not offer that free sponsorship to businesses in your areas as sort of a handshake deal, go back and revisit it later on. There might be other special offers that you're thinking of there. If this is anything that you want to chat through with us here at the CBAA, we are, of course, available to talk with you at your leisure. Be adaptable, move to online. I think a lot of people are sort of doing this already, and that could be sort of how you deliver your sponsorship. Obviously, your meetings that you're going to have with potential sponsors of the station are probably things that you're going to need to do so in an online forum, because just sort of meeting up is not an option these days. So you have to do that and reset your promotional calendars. That is sort of one of those things where how you plan everything is obviously going to change. You're going to need to review how you do this and consider what sort of the changes in the overarching environment of the world are going to impact upon that. That's SALT 106.5, 5 tips for your business in the current climate. I'm sure they're more than happy to chat with you about that. KLFM, Brad from KLFM has started up something there at the station called the Open for Business campaign. It's a situation where local businesses are asked to make contact with the station to provide advice on their operational status and renewed sort of business hours as they might be under the current environment. The station puts all this information together and the announcers read it out once per show. It's for all local businesses, not just sponsors. And indeed, it is probably one of those sort of things. The perception for that might sort of be, seeing as we're living through uncertain times, the perception for that might be that it's something that is not so much sponsorship, it's just as much a community service. People need to know what things are open in their areas and how they might be able to access all of that. So that's, Brad shared that with the CBAA in the hope that it might be sort of one of those things that other stations do want to take on. KLFM is a wonderful station. Brad recently celebrated 20 years there at the station, so he's obviously a lifer. He knows what he's doing. And he's been there as part of building all of these relationships with local businesses. So that's why he thought that might be a good thing. And that is something that is very, very easy to institute at your station, an Open for Business campaign, and sort of absolutely invaluable there if you want to get that information out there. Now, Pat has just joined us. I'm just going to promote her to panellist here. She'll drop out of the session, Pat, and then you'll join us as a presenter in just a second, all things being equal. Okay, she should be jumping in as a panellist any minute now, and then Pat will be able to address you. There you are, Pat. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be giving the floor to you in a second once the computer does its thing and lets you know that you're here. Pat, do you read me? Do all of you read me? Any of our participants out there, if you've got any feedback on those ideas that I was just laying forth just then, please feel free to let us know what you might have. Pat, I'll just unmute you, Pat, so hopefully you're not swearing at your computer at this point in time.
Well, I'm going to have to figure out with this, hello guys and ladies, how to get my screen up.
All right, Pat, I'm going to stop my share now. And so what I'll get you to do is put your cursor to the bottom of your Zoom window. You'll see an option there for share. And here you go.
But I've got to get my, hold on.
I'll let you do that thing.
And get mine up.
And everyone who's there attending, there's probably a big chance that a lot of the way you do business is going to be moving over to a platform like Zoom. So you can consider this to be a crash course in how to use Zoom as well. Screen. Let's go down on the share button. It'll open up a smaller window where it'll give you options of the different windows that are open.
All
There's
right, are you
Pat's
seeing
window
my
there.
screen?
I am indeed sharing your screen.
All right.
Pat, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
I will let you introduce yourself. I'll mute myself. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar.
Well, I'm happy to be here. And sorry, guys, for some reason I had, this was 8 o'clock my time, which I should have, I don't know. I think we've got a daylight savings time thing going on here. But I'm truly, truly happy to be able to talk with you. I have been doing this session for broadcasters here and in Canada for the last couple of weeks, but I first created it back in 2008. And are you all hearing me, by the way?
I can confirm that we are indeed hearing you.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
good, great. It was after the housing crisis. And depending on where I am in the world, there's some crisis going on all the time. Now, what I'm going to share with you today, research-wise, has been over the last 90 years. And what was studied was what happened in a recession. But I believe it is also what happens in any business interruption, whether that is the fires that you've had in your country, whether it is the drought, whether it's the price of oil or the flooding. As I said, everywhere I go, there is usually some external force that is causing a business interruption. We've never seen anything quite like this. The closest I believe that we've come to it was actually in the US, it was 9/11. And at that point, it wasn't that businesses were mandated to close or that people were mandated to stay home. They just did. They were afraid to go out. So I will give you the background, which as I'm asking my clients to do, take some of this information and create pieces with it that you can then take to clients. When we're talking about a recession, which by the way, we do not have here in the United States yet, but we do know that this pandemic is going to have a very large effect on business. But the definition of this is a decline in gross domestic product for 2 or more quarters. Now, most of the people I talked with got by okay in March because March was almost in, and these we've been ratcheting down what we can and can't do for the last 3 weeks. I flew home from Australia on March 1. And the only difference I saw in any of the airports was the question, have you been to mainland China in the last 30 days? But after about a week after I got home is when all of this started. So we have yet to see what will actually happen. But if you have not, you are going to hear these excuses. Businesses will begin to cut their donations, their sponsorships, any type of marketing efforts before things get bad. And you'll hear I can't keep advertising when I'm laying people off. Well, I know that the Australian government, much like the US government, has some plans in place to help those people who have been laid off, furloughed during this time. One of the big ones hearing, of course, is that we have to close. We're not considered an essential business, so we have to close. But there are some very good reasons why they should continue to advertise even when they're closed. And of course, people are afraid to come in. Now, Everything I'm going to share with you points to these two things. Do not cut back your marketing, your advertising, your sponsorships, because if you do, you are going to lose market share. And if you lose market share, it takes a lot of time and effort to get it back. The second thing that all of these studies have shown is that if you increase your advertising during a business interruption, it will help you gain market share. But here's the most important thing. Yes, we have to get from here to there, wherever there is, whether it's a month or two. But the big question is, what happens when the restrictions go off, when the pandemic passes? Because if you gain market share now, it's going to help your sales once things go back to more or less normal. Starting in 1927, Harvard Business Review reported companies who advertised the most experienced the largest sales increases. Now, we who are in the sponsorship, I understand that you guys sell sponsorships, not advertising, but sponsorships are indeed a form of advertising. So it's very logical that the more people know about you, the more they have an opportunity to buy from you when they need what you sell. But unfortunately, a lot of clients don't believe that. Moving forward, in 1949 through 54 and in 58 through 61, again, the same conclusions were reached, that sales and profits dropped when people reduced their advertising during a business interruption. But here's the thing, they continued to lag for several years after the recession ended. The question I'm asking clients, do you intend to be in business when this is over? And if the answer is yes, then the second question is, how quickly and how much and how high do you want your revenue to be once you get there? American Business Press, they looked at 143 companies in 74-75. The same conclusions. Companies that didn't cut advertising had the highest growth in sales during the 2 study years and the following 2 years. The Wall Street Journal ran a series of ads during that recessionary period, and they said, companies that maintain or increase spending get ahead. And they went on to say that there's a less crowded field. And this increased visibility allows for higher sales now and after. You see, when your clients have their competitors go silent, they can achieve a bigger share of voice without actually as much money, because nobody's out there competing with them. So they'll weather the storm better, but they will have higher sales after. 8182, McGraw Hill, huge research firm here. Firms that maintained ad expenditures averaged higher sales during the recession and for the following 3 years. This is, for many people, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build share and to build position. And we're going to talk about why that is so vital in a moment. It gives your clients the ability to move ahead of their competitors, because their competitors are going silent, reducing their own marketing efforts. So it's easier to command the field. The studies showed companies that cut advertising had the lowest sales during the business interruption and the following 2 years. It's not just about what happens now. It's about what happens 2 or 3 months from now as things begin to go to normal. Back to the McGraw-Hill study. In 74-75 and 81-82, they showed that there were some long-range advantages of keeping an advertising presence. And these, to me, are some of the most remarkable figures to come out of these studies. Companies that cut advertising in 81-82, between 80 and 85, so the 3 years after, as the recovery happened, they increased sales 19%. The companies that continued to advertise in 81-82 enjoyed a 275% sales increase. And that is not a typo. They literally shot up. So moving ahead to the 1990s market sense study, the best strategy when you've got a business interruption is to balance your long-term branding with promotion for short-term sales. Now, what we normally counsel our advertisers to do, our sponsors to do, is to always maintain a presence, a bonding presence. Now, when you're talking about sponsorship, when you're not actually talking about advertising, of course, you can't have a call for action in what you say. But right now, you shouldn't have a call to action, because anything that is going to be considered gouging is not a good thing. Kraft, Jif, they increased their advertising during the recession and had 57% and 70% growth. So here are the two things. And if you take anything away from tonight, this morning for you all, what I want you to get the message to your client is that if you continue to have a presence, you will have better sales during the next couple of 3 months. We need to change the messaging. But the big thing is that they will have better sales after the recession, after the business interruption. Those are the two conclusions that every study has had. Let's look at a few auto examples, because I know that automobile advertising and sponsorship is very important to radio. And I've been on the phone with clients here and in Canada as to what's happened, because the manufacturers have introduced some very good incentives, which they did after 9/11 also. But in 1975, Chevrolet increased, Ford reduced. Chevy's market share increased, took Ford 5 years to get its market share points back. Then in 78, 79, Ford didn't cut back. They found out the import advertisers aren't cutting back. So they increased their spending to maintain the market share. Chrysler cut back and lost share. I mean, again and again, we're seeing this. Here are some more examples. Now, the studies that were done were with large companies, and they are US based, but a lot of these companies are international companies. So my belief is that the findings are applicable in Australia, in Canada, in Europe, as well as the US. Jell-O, Crisco, Hellmann's, Green Giant, Doritos reduced their advertising. Their sales went down from 24 to 26%. Jif and Kraft went up. Bud Light and Coors both went ahead, 15 and 16%. They spent ahead of category. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. In 2010, Procter & Gamble, which is the world's largest advertiser, stepped up their global spending by over $1 billion. It was as much as 9.7 billion. And by the way, Procter & Gamble about 4 years ago began to shift their dollars back from digital into traditional media, of which we are, because guess what? Taking all their money into digital got them a lot of likes and not many sales. So they decided it wasn't working too well. The Television Bureau of Advertising got involved in this, and what their conclusions were that when a market is weak, it needs stimulation. And boy, does it ever. Because when any kind of businesses go silent, they are taking the grease off the wheels of the economy. When you have a business interruption, a recessionary period, or something like we're seeing now, the bold companies that step up can increase market share. If you're increasing spending, it doesn't hurt the short-term bottom line, but it does enhance your long-term profitability. People who go silent hurt their chances to improve market share. DDB Needham in 1990, what they said was that in times like this, consumers are looking for safety. Okay, and now we need to speak to what should the message be, because hard selling, which of course you all don't do anyway, does not work. Bonding does. We're in this together type ads, but also understand that there's a lot of information that our clients need to disseminate. My hours have changed. I'm only doing curbside. You know, whatever it might be, there are needs to disseminate the information, whether it's as your idea for doing the call in, the free, the on the web. Most clients are doing a variety of that somehow. Most of them lists on the website. Some are establishing phone-in lines where clients can call and talk about their businesses for a short time. They edit, put them on the air. But in times like this, customers are also looking for brand equity. They're uncertain. They're a little bit afraid. They don't know what the future is. So buying from a safe place, because people are still buying. I was talking to one of my clients in Canada who said, my electric razor went out. So he had to go to Walmart to buy one. Well, he didn't wait till the coronavirus is over. He went to get it. If your refrigerator goes out, you're going to replace it. We had a plumbing problem over the weekend. So we went out to get a piece of plumbing because we have a leak in one of our sinks. You know, life doesn't stop. There may be fewer people out there buying, but there are people buying. Now, we aren't in a position to conduct research, but I think we're a pretty good focus group ourselves. What we're feeling is what the majority of people are feeling. In fact, because we're an essential industry, we probably have more freedom than the average person out there. And for many of us, we're still working because we're an essential industry. So think about what you want to hear. And it's interesting because radio can turn on a dime when it comes to changing messages. Television, not so much. And for about the first 10 days of the crackdown here, the lockdown, I was still seeing television messages that hadn't changed. But about the 9th or 10th day, I felt like they were inappropriate. Now, in the last week, they've come to the table and they're doing some beautiful ads, including some car ads. But you see, it took them a while. This situation is changing daily, hourly in some cases. So the information flow is constantly changing, and that's what we do best. So we can be a help to our clients, and that's what they need. Remember, they've never been through this either. They don't know what they don't know what to do. We need to be their guide. But to be able to do that, we have to firmly believe that it is in their best interest to continue to talk to potential customers. So what TVB said was, continue to advertise. You can be more aggressive because you've got a softer competitive arena. And this is the important thing also that I want you to take away. The market, think of the market as a pie. Well, for our clients to figure out how they're doing, they can't just monitor sales volume. Because you see, the pie, the total sales expenditure is shrinking a bit right now. So their sales volume will go down somewhat. But the big thing is, and the opportunity they have here, is to increase share. So think about this. Other competitors have gone silent, but client A continues to speak to people. They change their message. They make it a we're all in this together. They make it a here's how we can continue to serve your needs. They make it about them. They create the bonding through their messaging. As their competitors go silent, remember there are still customers out there needing what these companies sell. Where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to the one that's walking through this dark time with them, that's still messaging them with a relevant message. What that does is increase market share. Now, when the pie expands, when this is over, if that company can hold the market share, that's why you see the 275% increases rather than 19. And because the competitors are silent, they can do more with less. They can have a larger share of voice. Connor's report said, maintain your level of advertising. People forget if you're not reminding them. And concentrate your advertising. Pick something that works and concentrate. Erwin Ephron is a ad buying and planning person, said, I know how hard it is to talk to people about spending dollars today when some of them are closed or they're cut back. But because this gives them a now or never opportunity, if they continue to speak to our listeners, they'll get a higher market share. You see, share of voice is not just determined by how much you spend. It's how much more you spend than the competition. And if the competition isn't spending, it gives you a unique opportunity. Now, please let me say, I know how hard it is to get people to attend to this message. And some will and some won't. We have, for some of my markets, we have casino advertising. Not all my stations take them, but some of them do. Every casino is closed in the US. They all pulled off, except one down in Texas. And it's advertising. And it has a beautiful ad. Their agency created it. And it says, look, we know you can't come and play with us now, but we're ready for you when you can. We hope to see you. In the meantime, stay safe. I think it's brilliant, because I guarantee you that that casino's ad share of market, and they're all fighting it out, is going to go way up once they can open again, and they're totally closed. So you want to take a hard look at your advertising, concentrate on what you know works, make sure you don't have dull advertising. And we want to create radio commercials that take advantage of how people learn. So I want to take a few minutes and talk to you about why I believe, in a time when advertising dollars are so precious, that they should spend them in radio. That this is the most effective, efficient way to get out their message. Here's what else I believe. The economy stands or falls with its advertising. When you have a capitalistic system, someone has an idea for a business, and they create the business, and they advertise the business, and people buy from the business, and they create more product, and they advertise the product, and people buy the product, and they create more product, and the wheels of industry turn. The grease on the wheels of that is what we do. Whether you call it support or sponsorship, it doesn't matter. It's messaging. Our vehicle is simply a message to deliver a set of messages to a group of consumers. And we do it better than, I think, any other media. We're all in sales, all of us. Nothing happens till someone sells something. And I define sales as simply creating messaging, teaching people, here's what you need, here's where you can go get it, here's why you should want it, here's what this product is. Our messaging is teaching. Now, it is 7:15. I had edited this down because I know you wanted a few minutes, which I so unwittingly supplied you at the beginning. Thank you very much for that. Shall I end with, or would you like to do a session on radio in the brain?
We've got 15 minutes to go, so we might try and get through to some questions. I mean, how long does the radio on the brain session take, Pat?
Well, it would be another 10 or 15 minutes. So if we want to do questions, we should probably start right here or stop right here. And by the way, I will be very happy to send you the workbook on this, which has, I took the liberty of filling out the first part of it so that you will have in printed form all the stats that we've been talking about here.
Excellent.
And if you will simply pat@patbryson.com and request it, I'll send it. And please sign up for my newsletter. They normally come out on the 1st and 15th, although I have one coming out the 1st. I've been writing them a little more often in this scenario because I'm trying to push out some of the information that we talked about today.
Okay.
So, you know, I'll send it out to you, and then what I would suggest you do is, based on each client and who you're talking with, you know, here are the 2 conclusions that all of these surveys come up with. And then at that point, you know, take a piece of them. Don't give them all the stats because, you know, that's too much information. But pick the ones that are most applicable. If you're talking to a car dealer, pick those. If you're talking to any other kind of business, pick some of the others as backup for why those conclusions keep showing up again and again and again.
Excellent. Well, Pat, in answer to your initial question, might I hedge my bets? I might use the remaining time that we have to ask some questions and the like, but can I possibly put an invite to you for in the near future to maybe come on and do Radio on the Brain as
Absolutely.
a CBAA webinar?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to be on time this time. And I, honest to Pete, I looked it up on the, on the clock. And did you all go to daylight savings time or something? Like
No. We finished daylight savings at the end of this week. So I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe there might have been
I
some
don't know. I do apologize. Thank goodness I walked back in my office and I was like, oops, there's your email. But anyway, you all were, you used the time wisely. So thank you for that. But yes, I'd be happy to, do whatever you need done, because we got to get through this, folks. And we will. It's, I think we're in the U.S. about 10 days ahead of where you guys are in the, I call it the lockdown or lockup or whatever, enjoying your homestead. But so, we're on the leading edge of this, at least, for what we're doing. So anyway, has anybody got any questions? How do you want to do this?
I'll read some questions for you. Geordie from the CMTO asks, a huge issue in our sector is that we rely a lot on sponsorship from live music, arts and cultural events, which are all shut down. Have you got any tips in that respect?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm on the board of the Tulsa Ballet here, and I was on a board meeting via Zoom this morning because we canceled the last half of our season. And one of the things they are doing is they are doing a live broadcast of one of their previously recorded performances coming up in a week. And I don't know if some of your arts organizations have the ability to do that. I know there are a lot of permissions that you have to get to be able to do that. But what I would say to those arts organizations is, even if you're not in performance now, talk about what next season will be. Talk about, with the example of the ballet here, we first of all postponed our last two performances. Now we've canceled them. So we have all of these tickets out, as most of your arts organizations will have. What's going to happen with those? There's a lot of messaging that needs to happen for what the public does with those tickets. Are they going to carry over? Are the events canceled, or are they postponed? Are they moved to the next performance season? So there's some information there, but the other thing I would do is write commercials for them that concentrate on how important the arts are, how much they appreciate your support that you've done in the past, and the arts will be back. We're going to be doing this, this, and this. And somehow work in a nice little call for money. We'd love for you to be able to support us if you can. I think it is a perfect opportunity for the right message. Does music, if it's something musical, music helps us when we're in isolation. When we're at home, think about how it can transport you. Particularly what kind of arts do you get the most support from?
All right, that's really wonderful. Sorry, go on.
Music? Is it music? Is it theater? Is it ballet, philharmonic? What is it?
What I think I think in this question it's very general. I think with a lot of the sort of stations in metropolitan areas, it would be live gigs and things like that. In rural and regional centres, it would be those live gigs plus relationships that they might have in place with local arts bodies and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, the arts, I think, with the right message, there's a real reason these two conclusions apply. if it's an event, a one-time event, we're going to lose those. The event's canceled unless it's postponed. And I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, it's, we're in, you know, it was interesting because after Katrina, I was doing a session on advertising in a crisis, and I called the guy that managed the Clear Channel, now iHeart stations, huge company here in New Orleans. And I said, how'd y'all do this? Because we're not talking about businesses closed. We're talking about businesses washed away. You know, it was, the whole area was devastated. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, you know, Pat, in times like this, business doesn't stop. Normal business stops. You have to think outside the box, and you have to think about what kinds of businesses will do better and go after them. And in times like this, we see nesting and cocooning. What is going to make your home better? Because I'm going to be stuck here for the next month or so. Usually it's an uptick in electronics. I've even seen remodeling, you know, right now, and I think you all have this about the same essential business list that we do here. But considered essential are things like construction, plumbers, you know, heating and air people. And if I were in one of those businesses, one of the things is, am I going to let a plumber in my house right now just because I have a leak? How do I know he's safe? So I would craft a message that says, you know, if not a good time to have a plumbing problem, but if you've got one, we're here to serve you. And you need to know that we come in gloves and booties, and and masks. You know, we're going to make it safe for our people and for you. It's okay to let us in your home. You know, something like that. But we need to sometimes change our focus and think what businesses need to get their message out right now, and then contact them.
Excellent. Then Michael Kerr asks a question about, is there evidence that the total listenership has changed in recent weeks as a result of everything that's happening?
Yes, there certainly is. Nielsen, which is our rating bureau here in the US, did a survey on March 20th and 22nd. And what it showed was that radio listening is up, and the curve is different. It's not just morning and afternoon drive, it's throughout the day. And as a matter of fact, if you will send me your address, your email, I will email that. Came out at Inside Radio, but I'll be happy to send that to you, because that's the question everyone was asking. Since people aren't commuting and a lot of the radio listening is in the car, does that mean nobody's listening? Think about it. We are the ones that provide news, information, updates, but more than that, we provide a sense of community and safety and companionship. And right now, people are big into the companionship because we're all going a little stir crazy here. So there are so many reasons that radio can meet the need right now better than I think anything. Yes, the internet is great, but it's not as much of a companion as we are. Whether it's through our music, our announcers that people had coffee with every day. So yes, I'll be happy to send you that.
Well, that might sort of answer one of the other questions that we had in here from Dominique. Should have said, when we're interacting with smaller community groups, expressing our value as radio, it's often about that direct connection to the audience. But obviously, these smaller community groups, they have that at their disposal because of social media. And so she asked, what's the real benefit, aside from this community goodwill and a slightly different audience, for initiating these sponsorship relationships with radio stations if they've got that direct connection already? And I think you've sort of answered some of that question there, but you might want to expand on it.
Yeah, I think our connection, radio's connection with listeners, is different than social media. And I'm not sure I can explain why, except, well, let me give you an example. I think this came out in Inside Radio a couple of days ago, but a young woman reached out to a morning team, a breakfast team, I think up in Massachusetts somewhere. And she said, hey, I hope you don't mind I called you. But she said, I don't know what to do. She said, my mom has a restaurant, and she just paid it off after, I think, 15 years. She paid it off on March 2nd. And then this hit. And we've had to lay off most of our wait staff. So my mom and I are serving, the dining room's closed. It has to be takeout. And she was almost crying. And she said, I don't know what to do, but would it be okay if I told the name of my mom's restaurant? So the morning team says, absolutely. So she talks about her mom's restaurant and where it is and what their times are. And, yes, you can get takeout and so forth. Okay, so fast forward the next day, the breakfast team gets a call from the mom, and the mom is in tears. And she said, I can't believe it. She said, I was so busy yesterday. Thank you. Everyone was coming in saying that they heard you guys talking about my restaurant. And it's already busy today. You've saved my restaurant. Now, I'm sorry, you can't do that kind of connection on social media. I just don't believe you can. The morning team interacting with her, putting the word out, and the community, because right now, the community, if there's a couple of good things that have come out of this, one is the sense of community that I think all over the world we're feeling. And the second thing is that sense of community translates into the people that are on our airwaves and are speaking. There's always been a connection with our announcers. And I know that today there are less live announcers on than ever before, which I hate, but it is what it is. But that kind of response, that instantaneous, a cry for help, put out over the airwaves, seconded by the announcers, and the teeming masses show up and help save this lady's restaurant. That's the kind of thing that radio does. It is the emotional connection with people that sound gives you. I'm getting into my next webinar now, but it's that connection with sound. It's the theater of the mind that nothing else does as well as radio. I've been in this business I've quit telling people how many decades, because they can add too well, but I'm convinced that if you cut me, I bleed little radios. But I've seen it work over the years. And I want to share two other things, and I know we've got to shut this down, but unless you want to go on. During the 2008, 2009, when the housing bust and the financial markets crashed, I was working about 2 hours out of Chicago in a small market. We served about 5 different cities, or towns. The biggest one was 18,000 people, but most of the towns had 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 2,000, 1,500 people, little towns. Okay, that particular county had a 15% unemployment rate. It was horrible. Okay, in the midst of this, in Tonica, Illinois, population 500 if everyone's home, I think, there was an appliance dealer that not only continued on for a couple of years, but increased his ad budget and survived and thrived, and he saw his market share go up. But there was another example in Peru, Illinois, Sherman's Appliance. And Sherman's had been a radio advertiser for a couple of 3 years, and it was time for his renewal. So my sales manager and the rep put together a presentation and walked in for the meeting. And before they could even get it out of their briefcase, Mr. Sherman said, okay, look, here's what I want to do. Whatever I spent last year, I want to spend 3 times that, and I want a 2-year deal. And they, picked themselves up off the floor and said, okay, I think we could do that. I could barely get the words out. So that's what they did. And not only that, but he built a new building. And let me assure you that since that time, Sherman's Appliance, which now has furniture, owns that county. I've seen it work, folks. I've seen it work. It's a hard message to deliver and to understand and to act on, but I've seen it work. Anyway, any other questions before? I'm okay on time. It's just up to you guys what you need to do.
Sorry about that. Just was taking a call as well as having this discussion with people. I think we're sort of nearly getting through to all of our questions, and we've come through to about the end of the hour. There is one more that I'm going to address. If anyone has missed anything, please make contact with Pat via that email address on your screen now, pat@patbryson.com. That counts for Michael, who was asking the question earlier about the listener numbers. Please feel free to give Pat or send Pat an email on that one. She'll be able to send all that information to you. One of the questions that I was going to answer was from Anne Morris, who asked, under the current lockdown, doesn't this mean where possible we should be operating with no one in the studio? How would this allow them to play their sponsorship messages as a way of supporting local businesses? We are sort of hoping that stations can do as much as they can to incorporate sort of play out systems and scheduling software into what they're doing. I spoke to a station in New South Wales earlier today. Majority of their presenters are somewhat elderly, and as such they made the decision that what they're going to need to do is they're going to need to go to automation for a month. But along with that, they're making sure that there's sort of live content from the community radio network going to air there. There's a regular message sort of saying, hey, we'll be back with our regular service as soon as is possible. And they've also got the month's worth of sponsorship announcements scheduled there and ready to go. So hopefully with that, I have maybe answered your question that yes, it is still fine for you to sort of put that sponsorship to air. Apologies if I have answered that incorrectly, and I am able to get in touch with you about that one. And indeed, anyone, if I've missed any of the questions, we are happy to remain a conduit between community broadcasters in Australia and our special guest, Pat Bryson. But also, Pat's given the very, very kind invitation there to contact Pat at patbryson.com. Pat, on behalf of the CBAA, our good friends there at the Community Media Training Organisation, who assist us with all of our webinars, thank you so much for being involved today. It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been an honor to talk with you. And, feel free to email me. And I've been pushing a lot of information, circulating what various companies are doing. And I'm always happy to do that. And
you might have dobbed yourself in there a little bit to come on and conduct another webinar for our listeners in regards to radio and the brain.
Yeah, that works. And you say you don't sell anything, right?
No, I think it'd be an honour for us to have you back here again. It's been a really wonderful session, and I understand probably you're extremely busy with everything at the moment. So thank you so much for taking the time today to be involved.
You're welcome.
And thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. Absolutely wonderful to have you here. If we've missed any of your questions, just get in touch with us, office@cbaa.org.au, or give us a call 0293102999. Please make sure that you are signed up for the CBAA e-news. The webinars will be coming thick and fast over the next few weeks as we, as a sector, react to COVID-19. So don't be surprised if you're getting more information about other sessions. Similar to this one, we're looking at sort of fundraising, governance, and other ways in which you can maintain your business during these very uncertain times. On behalf of the CBAA and our good friends there at the Community Media Training Organisation, thanks so much, everyone, for rocking up today. Very much appreciated. Wonderful to have you here. Keep up the good work. Anything going on at your stations, let us know about it. Thank you so much to Pat Bryson. Go to patbryson.com to sign up for the newsletter and find out more about all her great work. Thanks so much, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.